Hello and welcome. My name is William Pye, and this is basically going to be an introduction and overview of both myself as well as what this channel is going to be about. So, in particular, first things first, who is this evil pie guy? Who is this guy who's behind the voice, behind the camera? Well, who's this guy? Well, this is the avatar I usually make. I also occasionally use the design for writing and art, and I'll be honest, my art's terrible, so I will be using this thing fairly sparingly. But if you look at any of my profiles, I am listed as a professional mathematician, an amateur gamer, and a Tenchi Muyo fanfiction author. So, what do all of those things entail? So let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. Fanfiction, you say? What's that all about? Do tell. Well, fanfiction is defined to be essentially stories that involve popular characters that are written by fans and posted typically to the internet. I mean, you can certainly find fanfiction stories written about any type of series you want. And, well, why do I bring it up? Well, I bring it up because if you Google my handle, 9 times out of 10, you're going to find fanfiction stories. So I might as well address it and at least point it out before anybody goes searching for them in the first place. They're certainly still available, and I'm not completely embarrassed about them, mostly. Now, that said, what's the other part of that thing you were talking about that was tied to this fanfiction business? Well, that was Tenchi Muyo. So what is that all about? Well, turns out Tenchi Muyo was an anime series that was developed by AIC. The first episode was released direct to VHS and Laserdisc on the 25th of September 1992, and is currently licensed to Funimation, so it's still lurking out there in the ether. It's not exactly something that's hard to get a hold of these days. But, that said, if you want to know more about it, I would recommend seeing a nice little article on Tenchi Forum that actually gives a nice little introduction to it. I've also written a couple exposés myself, so certainly the information's out there if you want to get a hold of it. So, now, I still write and rewrite stories from time to time, depending on if I have the time and interest to actually to work on them. As you might imagine, having a day job, that's getting increasingly more difficult, but I still mess around with it from time to time when I have the chance. So what was that other thing you mentioned? Gamer, you say? What's that all about? Do tell. Well, if you're not aware, a gamer is a person who plays games, especially a person who plays computer or video games. And I'll be honest, I play my video games. I've been playing video games a good long time. And what do I do with those games? Well, I've played games basically since 1983. I was born in 1980, and right around the time I was 3 years old, I started getting into some of the earlier video game consoles. Specifically, I've been collecting consoles since that time. I have a TI-99-4A, my first computer. Still works, by the way. I still have an Atari 2600, my first actual video game console, which still works, still has some problems that I need to get fixed, but it's still functional. And I have a selection of the Nintendo consoles as well. As you also can see, I have some of the more modern versions of these consoles, like the Retron 77 and Retron 5. Reason being is that, well, let's be honest, there are times when the older consoles don't work as well as they used to, and I do need to get them repaired, so I always have a fallback in case I need to play a video game and need to do some video gaming. Well, so what else can you say? Well, I do still stream on Twitch. So I've actually streamed on Twitch since 2015, and that's actually kind of what got me into this whole online presence thing in the first place. So if you're interested, come and join me sometime, and maybe we'll play a video game that you might like. Now, more to the point, mathematician. Mathematician, you say? What do you mean, mathematician? What is a mathematician? Well, a mathematician is a specialist or expert in mathematics, exactly as the word implies. And considering how much I've studied mathematics, I hope I count. But, realistically, what does a mathematician do? Most people, when they hear the word, probably think, oh, you teach classes, you're a math teacher. Well, you're not wrong. Many math instructors at university have masters and PhDs in the relevant area, much like any other discipline at university. Most people who teach at university have at least a master's degree, if not a PhD. But that's not all they do. Many of them also still do original research. And that original research, again, new papers, new findings in the area. Mathematics is certainly an old discipline, but it's by no means dead. And that ongoing research is something that you can get into. Secret, if you want to actually get on an instructor's good side, ask them about their dissertation research. You'll get a juicy story, and you might actually find something that you yourself want to study. But considering that research, you also want to find that research and actually present it at conferences. So the slide format that I'm using here is actually the same kind of engine that I would use to make slides for a conference presentation myself. And that's part of what I want to do with this YouTube channel, is essentially improve my presentation skills as well as my format and add a little spice here and there to it. Be a little bit more creative than I would normally if I was just presenting my dry work at the office. But also another thing that mathematicians do, if you do this original research and present it at conferences, you want someone to actually critique that work and make sure that it actually has some relevance and actually has some weight to it. And thus you have a peer review process. Just like the other sciences like physics or chemistry, you have a peer review process to make sure and that the material that's being published is vetted and is actually accurate. And, of course, you also have mathematicians who work in industry. They work with the engineers that help build things and whatnot. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not someone who's actually done anything in industry. I don't care to either. But I do certainly respect those people who actually do that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have things like the internet or computers or any of this business that we're using to actually view these YouTube videos right now. Now, the next thing you're going to ask is, well, what about your credentials, Pi? What do you got? Well, here are my diplomas and certificates. Now, I don't want to toot my own horn for very long, because that's not really my purpose here, but I do have expertise in the relevant areas, and I want to improve. I want to be a better mathematician, as well as just a better presenter in general. So what about this channel? This is something I've been giving a lot of thought over the last couple years, and the pandemic has kind of forced me to reevaluate a lot of things as well as work on some relevant skills. And here's what I've decided. First off, let's actually address what this channel is not going to be. So what is this channel not going to be? Well, it's not going to be about answering homework questions, tips or tricks, or being aimed at a particular class. I have been giving some thought about streaming games to the channel, but I currently have no plans to do that. I already do that on Twitch, so I don't really need to double up on it here. And I also currently have no plans to discuss Tenchu or fanfiction on this channel, because, well, let's be honest, that's a bit of a dumpster fire of its own. Then, what will this channel be about then? Well, I've given it some thought, and here's what I've decided. I've often told students that modern mathematics is based on sets and functions on those sets. Indeed, if you look at several of the textbooks I actually own, they either have a preliminary chapter or appendix that talks about some kind of primer for set theory, some kind of initial amount of set theory you need to get underway. And here's just a few of them. Lang's algebra, you have Muncrief's topology, Davidson-Danzig's real analysis, you have Fallon's real analysis, you have Rudin's real and complex analysis, you have Royden's real analysis. Of course, you look at all these books and you think that you might be talking to an analyst or something. However, I've not actually had a formal course in logic or set theory. I've certainly taken discrete mathematics, which talks about logic as well as some set theory. I've also taken courses in philosophy, but they didn't exactly go the mathematics route. So I've never actually had an axiomatic set theory course that essentially goes all the way down to the bare metal. And you know what? Why don't we start there? Why don't I start in this particular gap in my education where I didn't actually learn formal logic or axiomatic set theory? Start there and build and see where we can go from there. With that goal and impetus in mind, here's sort of a short-term outline, or if you like, a local plan of what I want to do with this channel and what I hope to accomplish. So, in particular, let's go point by point. I want to start with logic. In particular, I want to establish a solid foundation in reasoning, and I want to connect mathematics back to philosophy. So how does mathematics arise out of logic and philosophy? How does that happen? Well, the way I think that happens is actually set theory. I want to understand the defining axioms of sets because I think that is actually how one would build mathematics out of logic and philosophy at that bare metal stage. And once you have sets, you can use those axioms of set to build relations and functions between sets. The reason why you would want to do that is because more advanced structures, like a, say, topological space or a measure space or whatnot, are typically a set equipped with other structure, such as other sets, relations, or functions. So every other mathematical structure at some level comes back to a set in some way, shape, or form. Then, we're going to jump the shark a bit and go to category theory. And the reason why I want to go to category theory specifically is because category theory can be motivated by using sets and functions. If you think about sets and functions between sets, the way those interact forms a category and can motivate the definition of what a category should be. Moreover, other structures, more advanced structures, can be built by categorical means, and that's something I want to investigate more deeply. How does one get to a magma from sets? How does one get to topological space from sets without making some kind of ad hoc definition? How can you build it in a natural way? And category theory is all about natural. So that is ultimately my goal, is to get to there, and then I can branch out into other disciplines of mathematics by building the appropriate category. I thank everyone for listening. Here's actually a set of links that actually are references for all the different definitions I got off of, for example, like Merriam-Webster, as well as also a link back to that Tenchi Talkback. I'll put these in the video description if you'd like to investigate them yourselves, and in which case, again, thank you once more for watching, and we'll see you next time.